And welcome to this week's episode of The Damp Show. It's a big warm welcome from me, Damp Sam. So today I want to talk about James Berry's piece in the PCA's newsletter, where he addresses a few issues that we've still got in our preservation industry. And I thought it were interesting when I were reading it. And I thought I'd just go over what James has said, and then put my kind of spin on things as well. So we have a newsletter every week from the PCA Property Care Association, which is it's one of the leading associations when it comes to anything to do with preservation industry, which is Japanese knotweed, rising damp, penetrating damp, all types of damp, structural waterproofing, ventilation and insulation. So anything to do with them topics, PCA has been going for years. So James has done a piece, and I just want to go over it because I found it really interesting. So this is in the light of what's happened with the Ombudsman's report that were fetched out, which preceded the inquest into a little boy in Rochdale, who is Awab Ishak, sorry, and there was a flood of inquiries after this came out to all councils, housing associations. They were inundated with people seeing a bit of black mould, all different levels, and just getting in touch with the councils and and just wanting some answers. So this is what we've kind of moved on. We're back end of April now, and that is usually seen as the coming to the end of the what's known as the condensation season, which is end of September roundabout and to back end of April, and throughout that sort of 4 months or whatever it is, might be more 5 months. We keep us windows closed inside us properties more. There's less ventilation. We stay in a lot more, and if your property's not adequately ventilated or insulated, you start to get these issues, and they start to show up at this time of year. And this is when we get all these stories. So I'm just going to get into what James has said. Oh, just before I start, if anybody wants to sponsor the Damp Show, if anybody wants to that thinks that our product is in line with your product, if you're in the preservation industry, get in touch, and we'll see about sort of doing a joint venture together, and if you want to sponsor us, we can put some adverts on. If you've got any pictures and stuff, get onto our Facebook group, Damp Sam. Why is my property damp Sam? And you can put your stuff on there. And if you want to get in touch with me, and you've got issues with damp and black mold, then hopefully if you get in touch, we can point you in the right direction. And who knows, it might be me that's coming to sort your damp and your condensation and black mold things out. So this is what James has got to say. So the title is, "Could it be lifestyle? Have we gone too far?" Question mark. And this was fetched out on the 12th of April, 2023. So if you might be hearing this in the future. So if you're in the future, hello from the past. Well, it says, over the last 6 months, the media focus on social housing has been relentless, and it has. A recent BBC Panorama programme explained the complexities of the issues and implied that some of these issues are left over from a legacy and lack of replacement housing caused by the Right to Buy scheme. So the Right to Buy scheme was fetched in by Margaret Thatcher back in, I I don't know whether she did it in late 80s, or whether it started in. No, it must have been. So I think it was late 80s. And what she said, what people that's had the council houses for so many years or a certain length of time had the right to buy, and you got sort of discounted for how long you've been there and how much rent you paid. And it started off, you could get them for next to no, because a lot of people had been in them council houses for years. And I think, I don't know whether they've still got it. I think they're still doing it, this right to buy, because my apprentice, his grandma, bless her, she's passed away. Sorry, it's his great grandma. She was 90 odd year old, and she lived in a council bungalow in Barnsley. And they said to her she could have bought it. She could have bought it about 4 times over, and she never did. She never wanted to buy it, and when she passed away, left nothing, and they had to go and clear her property out and move all the stuff out for council. So so it's just a bad decision all round. If she'd have bought it herself, she'd have probably paid a similar amount of rent, and she'd have had some. She'd have had something that is theirs and something to pass down. So and I just don't understand people that don't want to do that. But what happened was, when they gave these people a right to buy, they never replaced this housing stock. So there were a massive shortage. So populations got bigger. There's people that can't get on property ladder, and there's no housing in the councils. Housing associations have set up different ones, but they're miles behind on how many properties is needed. So also breaking cover in the last few weeks was a Housing Ombudsman's special report on Rochdale borough-wide housing. So that's a housing association in Rochdale. James said, I found this extremely difficult reading and would encourage anyone who deals with dampness in tenanted properties to read and take note of this report. Clearly, a lot of incorrect assumptions have been made in the Awab Ashik case. But equally, there was a cultural issue too, where the tenants were marginalised if they differed from the norm. It is clear that there's a mammoth task on their hands in turning the issues around. So one of the things that James is kind of implying there is, if you're not from England, if you're from a different country and you've got differing ways of living, so if you live in smaller properties, more people in them properties, then councils are kind of saying you've got to live by our rules, and they're not taking into consideration how people lived back where they came from. So empower staff with specialised training and qualifications, because this is close to my heart and a thing that I employ everybody to do, same as anybody with an educated mind would. The report highlighted a lack of training for staff. There aren't really any excuses. Those who carry out the inspections need specialist training. And I've mentioned this time and time again, you know my thoughts on it, saying that each council housing association should have a small number of staff that's all got qualifications to be able to go into properties when they've got voids, and survey them, and then get that work done in a short space of time, whatever's needed. So whether it's ventilation, cleaning down, mould isolating, any damp issues, get them sorted in these voids in between tenants. This is not intended to be a shameless plug for the PCA, and there are others out there too. So there's other training providers, good training providers as well, can help with this. And whilst we have been delivering training to housing associations for decades, we have seen a sharp rise in recent months. We would encourage those that are the front line to undertake qualifications, to empower staff, and to give them the confidence to deal with these issues. And if not, go to someone that is qualified. The report does allude to the fact that we should consider the extent, location, and severity of the condensation and mould. This is sound guidance. It highlights how the property that Awab and his family had lived in had damp in 3 rooms, which won't have triggered an immediate response on their treatment plan. But when put into the context that this was a 1-bedroom flat with only 4 rooms in total, the issue was quite severe. So when you look at that, this is one of the things that got missed. So when they were kind of ringing up, the people on the other end of the phone just thought, maybe assumed it were a different type of property, a bigger property. And their alarm call or one of the triggers would have been if it's in more than so many rooms. But because this were a 1-bedroom flat with only 3 rooms, and probably one of them is a small bathroom, 1 small bathroom, 1 bedroom, living area, and a kitchen. And I don't know how many people were living in there, but 3 of them rooms were covered in black mould. So this is one of the things that were missed. We need to ensure there is balance too. The left-hand image is an example of the government is saying is unacceptable, and on the right is my own bedroom window on a morning in April. So I'm going to explain these two pictures what James has put up. So on the left, it's in top left-hand corner, it says HM Government, and there's a badge on top, and then a big straight across from it says unacceptable, and then underneath there's a tick like there's a tick like what we've got on here on all dry. So there's like it looks like a property, and then a tick across it, and it just says make things right. So they've borrowed that, and it's like the corner of a window, and there's a handle to the window, and then there's a bit of black mould round seal, and then there's some condensation on window, but there's also, I can see some ice, and I can't tell whether that's on inside or outside. So there's a bit of ice on window as well. And then on right hand side there's James's window, and it's a similar window but without the handle, and James's property's got all condensation, and this is on the inside. So I'll just carry on. So it says the guidance goes to say that if this isn't resolved within 8 weeks, then the issue should be reported to the housing ombudsman. So if a tenant has got a window like what the government's saying on their website, if it's similar to that picture, then the tenant, if it's not resolved in 8 weeks, the tenant should report these conditions to the housing ombudsman. And James says, I'm all for aiming high, but this is a standard we are set. If this is a standard we are setting, all too soon the housing ombudsman will become overwhelmed, and if we are not careful, this could be a detriment to a very valuable and beneficial service, especially in the light of the new standards the government is setting. And he's right. So more people that see these photos, they're going to go, no, I've got a bit of condensation on my window. I'm going to complain to council, and if they don't do now, then 8 weeks later, straight to housing ombudsman. And considering I don't know. Say I'm not up on numbers, but there's around about 25 million properties in Britain. So if we said a quarter of them, if we said a quarter of them's tenanted, so you're going to get a big percentage that's going to be complaining and wanting something doing just because they've got condensation on the windows, and that is just like a ventilation issue and can be resolved fairly easily. So James says, I personally don't believe what is shown in the image is unacceptable, and I agree. I don't think it is. To some degree, I think it's unavoidable, and in many instances, very easy and quick to deal with. So we get condensation in our property on a morning in winter, and it all depends on how cold it is in house, how many people's living here, how many people's showering, what humidity is, what the percentage of the humidity in the property is. Have we had windows open the day before? There's a lot of factors that could, give you condensation on your windows if you don't usually get it. We need to move away from the term lifestyle. The report indicates that flippantly using the term lifestyle is not acceptable. Again, I agree with that. It's as lazy and as bad as using the term breathable. And that's referring to properties. And it grates on me. I see it all the time. Breathable this. Oh yeah, house needs to breathe. The house needs to breathe. You ain't got a set of lungs, has it? But this isn't new and was highlighted in the report produced in 2021. However, it does suggest that this report has been replaced with other euphemisms, and the overall approach and tenant blaming tone had not shifted. So James says, I completely agree with the move away from the term lifestyle. It's combative, diverse, and generally counterproductive to working towards a solution. In this report, they highlight the fact that tenants had been blamed for both damp because they were drying clothes and cooking in the home. I'm sorry, but these activities are almost what everybody does in their properties, and it's not adverse to lifestyle. I'm certainly against the term being used as a substitute for poor diagnostics. And it's right, everybody dries clothes indoors. Mrs. Damp Sam, Moist Mel, she dries clothes all the time. And that's probably why we get a bit of condensation on windows. And we've got fans in kitchen. We've got best fans. So we've got top of range fans in kitchen, bathroom. And I've even got a PIV unit. And we still get a bit of condensation in condensation season. So, yeah. So people that's not got adequate ventilation, it's going to be like it's raining in their houses. But I also think we can't completely dismiss the fact that excessive moisture production in a home is going to cause issues. There will be scenarios indicating excessive cooking or drying off clothes, but we have to be able to call it for what it is and support this with a good level of diagnostics. So when you go to survey a property, especially these older properties that council have put people in, there's going to be different issues. It's not all going to be one issue, and you've got to identify these different issues of dampness that's causing issues. And this is what a lot of people can't do. They can't go into a a flat or into a house and go, right, well, this bit here is caused by condensation. This bit here is caused by that bush that you've got outside against wall. That bit's from your leaking gutter that's coming in, and you've got some penetrating damp. There's a bit of bridging where you've had a bitumen floor screed put up at top of a concrete floor screed, and that's been left for years, and that's starting to bridge. This is where that wall's been taken out, and you've put one in and not had a damp course in. So there's loads of different issues that have to be looked at and diagnosed separately. This is one thing that a specialist, that a general surveyor can't do, but a specialist damp surveyor can do, because he's had the correct training. Too much moisture production can, of course, be down to overcrowding in properties, and we get that. And this is highlighted in the report. Whilst ideally moving the tenants to a larger property might seem the obvious solution, as Panorama highlighted, there is very limited stock of houses, making this a hugely difficult and complex situation. And this is what we're saying with the right to buy. Houses were took out of local authority control, and they never replaced them. The Panorama programme also highlighted that in many instances within a tower block, dampness could originate from the adjacent property, which may not be owned by a social landlord and to which they have absolutely no control. So there's these blocks of flats that councils probably, someone might have done the right to buy. So there might be 100 flats in a block, and 25, I don't know, 25% might have got their right to buy, and they might be dotted all up and down that block. If they're below, if they're producing lots of moisture, if they're continually cooking, if they've just had kids and they're continually washing, and they've got loads of other kids as well, so washer's always going, cooker's always going, there's a lack of ventilation in their property, that moisture, that water vapour is going to go laterally, and it's going to go upwards as well. So it'll go out at door, and it goes through fabric at building up to next level, and it rises up. So this is the issue, and councils and social landlords have got no control over that. So this makes their job even more difficult. Social housing and a data-driven approach. James said, "From my own experience, there is clearly a lot that can be done, but there is a fine line to tread here. We must ensure that our social housing is of decent standard. No one should fall ill from the home that they live in. Equally, we must be careful not to tip the balance too far in the opposite direction. Minor problems should be treated as minor problems, wiped down and washed away with routine cleaning. For those who diagnose moisture-related issues, we should be able to say if an issue is down to excessive moisture production, as long as we can support it with a data-driven approach." So there's been quite a few new tools that's come onto the market to help us surveyors. One's been it's been invented. I want to say invented. It's been developed, not invented. It's been developed by three of the top people in our industry, and two of them's got their own company. One is a professor that taught me, Graham Coleman, and together they've developed this app called the Culminator app, and I use it. A paid for app, and they're not making a load of money off it because they want it to be given to surveyors to help us diagnose issues in this industry. So all we do is when we go onto a property and it's a condensation issue, we go out there, and there's certain measurements that we take, and then we put it into app, and it comes up with an air quality, some data that gives us, whether air quality is good, bad, and these are all driven by psychometric charts and data that's been put in, and calculations made. So it does all calculations for you, and you can see what the probabilities of mould developing are from the readings that you've took at that time. And readings are internal air temperature, external air temperature, internal relative humidity, external relative humidity, and then a surface temperature inside property. So you only need like I'm sure it is five measurements. Put it in, and then you get these 3 data boards, and you can go into their website and get even more data. But usually, you just need these, and it's a simple approach. I take these measurements on site, as well as photographs and everything else, and I can put that into the app, take a screenshot of each column, and I put that in with my report as backup evidence. So if anybody out there that's not any surveyors that's not tried the Culminator app, have a look for it on your app store, and I thoroughly recommend it. So yeah. So this is what James is saying about a data-driven approach. There's other things you can get. You can, if there's any arguments over whether it's an internal problem, or whether it's like penetrating, any problems, arguments with tenants and councils over what type of damp is affecting that property, then there's always data loggers. So you can put these data loggers into a property. So there's two goes into property, and there's one kept outside somewhere. It's normally at a research place, and you can leave it for an amount of time, up to 3 months or whatever, or even longer. And when you collect that data, you can see exactly what's been happening in the property with regards how much moisture has been produced, temperatures, and what information you get from that. I don't know now that they've changed wording on these reports. So if you do get this information from data loggers, and it says that on that day that they were washing loads of clothes, look at humidity, all energy were on, so we can see that they were washing loads of clothes. But that's just, you know what I mean? It is their lifestyle, and you can't have that as an answer now. So when I first did my ventilation course, this was one of the things that they said. If there are any arguments, put data loggers in, and you can tell whether tenants to blame. It's the tenant's fault, for producing loads of moisture. And you get that data, and you'd be able to put it in a report and give it to councils, and they can turn around to tenants and say, yeah, but it's not our fault, it's your fault. Look at you producing all that moisture. But now you can't do that. Now they've got to provide adequate ventilation, adequate insulation. If it's overcrowded, they're going to have to do something about it. There's other things, washing, like James has said, washing down black mould with correct solutions, redecorating with correct paints, anti-mould paints, things like that. So there's all these things that you can do, but you've got to diagnose them properly. These things have got to be diagnosed by qualified specialist, and I'll say damp surveyors, because general surveyors, as good as they are, they're not specialists. They're not specialists in that area. They've done a general thing, like a GP, general practitioner. He's not a specialist. You won't go to him if you've got a continually painful bad back. At some point, he's going to refer you to a specialist. So this is what happens with problem properties for councils, private landlords, housing associations. At some point, they'll have tried sending their surveyors out. They'll have tried sending their tradesmen, the best tradesmen. And if these issues keep reoccurring, at some point, they're going to have to be referred to a specialist, which is what we do. And they're going to say, damn Sam, can you come in, do us a report on that? And I'm going to say, yeah, it's X amount of money, pay up front, and I'll come and do it. So anybody out there that's got a problem property, get in touch. And it's dampsam at alldrydampproofing.com. And I'll see if I can help you. And like I said, you've got to pay for the knowledge. And it's just like anything. There's a price for everything. But this is what I go on about with damp. People. A lot of people that say that they're damp companies, or people that say I'm a damp surveyor. A lot are not qualified. A lot have just set a company up. I've been on a couple of manufacturers courses. I've done a bit of work in this sector, but are not specialists. They've not gone and invested in themselves. They've not gone on courses. They've not got the relevant qualifications, and they've not kept up to date with relevant products. So what they're doing is basically trying to make as much money as they can by donkeying through loads of work. And they do get blurred sometimes. They sort of get blasé. They go out and they're looking at different jobs, and they're doing them that quick that they're putting everything down to different, to the same problem. So it's it's rising down, knock it all off 120 meters up in and then replaster according to BS 6576, and that is replastering after damp proofing. And a lot of time, the different issues. So I've said before on this podcast, not all damp is rising. So you have to diagnose each bit separately. So I'm going to wrap this up. I hope you've got a bit of value from it. I'm not sure whether it's an enjoyable thing, but if you gain value from it, you probably are enjoying it. But these podcasts, a lot of these podcasts are trying to give you some value, trying to give you some information that you can take in your life and be pointed in the right direction. So if you are a tenant in a housing association property, a council property, or a private landlord, make sure if you've got issues, log them yourself. Take photos, videos, log the date that you make your complaint, who you're making your complaint to, time you're making your complaint to. Record phone conversation if you can. I don't know how you do it, the different apps, but if you can record conversation, just log everything. Because if it does go to Ombudsman, the more information you've got, the better your chances are of getting a result. So that's one bit of advice that I'd give you. So if you're a tenant and you've got issues, log everything from start to finish. Take photos of all your issues, and then when you speak to people, write down who you've spoke to, record it, put it in a file, because you might need it for Ombudsman. And if you're a social housing company, if you're a council, what you need to do is you need to do a PCA postcode search for your nearest specialist qualified surveyor. It's up to you whether you get a contractor surveyor or an independent surveyor. And if you've not got your own team of qualified specialists, use that surveyor as part of your team when you get voids. So if a tenant moves out before another tenant moves in, get your specialist surveyor to go in, do a report, and tell you what's needed, and use specialist contractors or your own contractors that's been on relevant courses to fix them issues. So it'll be electricians that's been on ventilation courses, PCA do them. You've got plasterers, joiners, plumbers, any of them can go on a technician's course. PCA, you could send them on a 2-day course so they know about dampness in buildings. What's the other thing? So yeah, electricians for ventilation and any other trades for all other stuff. But you've got to make sure whoever's doing work has done that work before and are familiar with all the practices and techniques. And if you do that, you're not going to go far wrong. So that's Damp Sam signing off. I hope you've really enjoyed it, and I'll see you on next week. Bye bye now.